Okay. Thank you for the introduction, Plucky. Nhớ trong sân. Hey, are we back on? Okay. Nhớ trong sân dưới chân này cho gì? Cho mình tự mình nhỏ ha, cho phong yêu trong lên sự tự. Or good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you this morning. I'd like to thank the Hmong Student Association for inviting me and allowing me to participate with you this morning. As this occasion is to raise awareness about the Hmong community, I was asked to speak about Hmong history, Hmong culture, and the educational experience of the Hmong. At first, I thought that there were too many topics and that we needed to narrow it down, because each of these topics could take up to an hour, even more, to fully discuss it. However, as I prepare for this speech, I have to agree with the Hmong Student Association that if we are going to provide a good glimpse to the Hmong community, we have to touch on all these three topics. And in order to effectively serve the Hmong community. Until 2 months ago, I was a resident of Chico for 2 years. In my first year, I was not that involved in the community. However, in my second year, I became actively involved with the clan leaders and the Hmong communities themselves. My involvement was in the capacity of project director with Chico Hmong Advisory Council, where I oversaw all the programs and activities of Chico Hmong Advisory Council. In that capacity, I had the privilege to deal directly with the service providers, advocates, and members of the Hmong community. And what I quickly learned was this. There was a substantial lack of educational and cultural activities on the part of the Hmong community to help the mainstream community and the service providers community to have a better understanding about the Hmong. On the part of the mainstream community and public service providers, there was a substantial disconnect, misunderstanding, and disregard for addressing the needs of the Hmong community fairly and effectively. Staff from one agency actually initially resisted our efforts to help them gain a better understanding about the Hmong community. They actually say they didn't want to learn or know about Hmong history. However, this public agency later agreed to our suggestion and went through a Hmong cultural sensitivity training. But I have to say, it was harder than pulling teeth for this agency to open up. And so it is with these reasons that I just talked about that I'm going to introduce you to the Hmong community this morning. I hope that when you leave here today, you will know the Hmong not only by the stereotypes of being brown-skinned Asian Americans who cannot speak English well, who sells produce and flowers at the farmer's market, and some of whose children have fallen into the gangs of American society, but that the Hmong are a proud, courageous, peace-loving, and hardworking people who only wanted to be treated with dignity and respect by their new neighbors and old-time friends, the American people and government itself. Let me now talk about how we came to the United States. I'm sure many of you, especially those of you who are not Hmong, were at one time or another confused about how we suddenly popped up in your communities. And you did not understand why we came. Just as you were puzzled, we were also puzzled that you didn't understand why we came. That prompted our leaders to search out the truth. And what was found was that our right to be here and our sacrifices and contributions to the United States were kept from you, the American people. In addition, the old-time societal disease of racism continued to blind many Americans from seeing and accepting the truth about the Hmong, which is that the Hmong have earned the right to be here in America, and they should be treated with respect, just as any other people would like to be treated in this country. If you recall, during the Vietnam War, many American soldiers were sent to Vietnam to help curb back the spread of communism. The public knew about that, but they did not know that the Americans, the CIA, was also in Laos, recruiting, advising, training, and supplying military weapons to the Laotian ethnic groups, particularly the Hmong, to also help curb back the spread of communism. You did not know that because the CIA was not supposed to be there, and there was no publicity of their presence in Laos. During the Vietnam War, Laos was to be a neutral state in that no foreign military forces were to be in Laos. That was the agreement known as the Geneva Accord. However, the North Vietnamese communists, the North Communist Vietnamese broke this agreement by keeping military troops in Laos and establishing a supply line known as Ho Chi Minh Trail along the borders of Laos connecting North and South Vietnam. Realizing that this had occurred and the United States did not want to appear non-compliant to the Geneva Accord, and so that less American lives would be lost in South Vietnam, President Kennedy gave the orders for the CIA to step up recruitment of the Hmong to fight the North Vietnamese as a covert special guerrilla unit, a CIA secret army. The CIA had approached Vang Pao, who was a major at that time in the fall of 1960, and convinced the Hmong to fight as allies to the United States. The agreement was that the Hmong would be an army for the CIA would provide the military training and supplies for the Hmong soldiers. If the US wins the war, the CIA will help rebuild Laos. If the war is lost, the CIA will provide a safe haven for the Hmong. Believing that the CIA would not back up on its words, the Hmong fought for the CIA secret war in Laos from 1961 to 1975. They carried out three primary objectives. One, they blocked or suppressed the North Vietnamese from using the Ho Chi Minh Trail to transport military supplies and troops to South Vietnam. Two, they collected intelligence for the CIA. And three, they rescued American downed pilots. According to the CIA, our efforts saved thousands of American lives. While American lives were saved, we paid the ultimate price. At first, recruits for most soldiers were just men, but as the war lingered and fully grown Hmong soldiers died, young Hmong children as young as 12 years old were recruited. At the end of the war, according to General Alcohol, one of the original CIA representatives who negotiated with Vang Pao, and various sources such as the Lao Veterans of America, over 35,000 Hmong lives were lost. This was equivalent to 10% of the Hmong population at that time in Laos. Compare this to the loss of the United States of 50 lives, which was less than 1% of the American population at that time. One can easily see that the Hmong lost many more lives in the war, the Vietnam War. But that was not the end of the atrocity. What followed the aftermath of the Vietnam War was horrendous. First, the CIA or the United States pulled out of Laos without looking back, and they did not provide a safe haven as promised. Shortly after the CIA returned to America, the Communist Vietnamese and Laotian pursued the Hmong to put them in concentration camps or to be killed. Among the things that the Communists did, they used chemical weapons such as Agent Orange to poison the air and waters in the jungle so that the Hmong would be killed. They persecuted the Hmong because we had helped the United States during the Vietnam War. This led to over 100,000 Hmong making the decision to leave our homes in 1975. We had no choice. We either leave or face persecution and put or death by the communists because we had helped the United States. I was one of the lucky ones who made out of Laos alive in 1978. Although I was only 5 years old at that time, I still remember running from the communists to this day. As the communists came closer to our villages, we ran with what we could carry on our backs and hands and hid in caves and walked in the dark in the jungles so that we would not be found. At one point, my mother was actually caught by the communists, and they threatened to slice her up and dried up her flesh in the sun. Luckily for my mother, our ancestors looked down, and God looked down on her, and she escaped in the middle of the night. Our family, along with our group, eventually made it to the ferocious Mekong River, which separates Laos and Thailand. To cross it, we had to bribe Thai boatsmen to take us over. Many people died at this river due to communist attacks and drowning. The boat that I was in almost tipped over. Luckily, my uncle was able to force a Thai boatsman to rescue us. Once on the other side, we were put in refugee camps that were fenced and guarded. We were not allowed to leave the camps unless we were sponsored by someone in the United States or other industrialized countries. Because the United States was our #1 friend during the Vietnam War, most of us came to the United States. Others went to France, Canada, Australia, and other countries of the world. The very last wave of Hmong refugees will probably arrive this summer in the United States. And so here we are in the United States. We've been here now for just about 30 years. In these 30 years, the Hmong identity has gone through many changes. In fact, it is really hard to know what is Hmong and what is not Hmong anymore. With this, I shall now introduce you to the Hmong culture so that we may have a better understanding of it. As with any group on this earth, there are some distinct characteristics about them that gives it its identity. To begin with, in the Hmong nation or Hmong community, we like to say, "Beya ihai tuneng," or we are one people. We say this because we have an inborn feeling of belonging and bonding toward one another, regardless of where we are in the world. According to Dr. Pao Sai Cao, a Hmong medical doctor in Australia, and Dr. Gary Ye Lee, a Hmong anthropologist also in Australia, there are 5 additional identified levels in the Hmong social structure. From the level of Hmong community or Hmong nation that I just talked about, it breaks down into clans or last names. Depending on where you are in the world, there could be anywhere from 17 to 25 clans in the Hmong community. Examples of clans are Mo, Her, Tao, Li, Vu, Xiong, and Yang, which are the clans that could be found in Chico. Kinship and subsequently marriage is determined by which clan one belongs to. Within each clan, it breaks down into subclans that are distinguished by ritual ceremonies. For example, a sub-clan in the Tao clan called Monta Yaishota practice the ritual where all new mothers cannot touch any fire for a period of 5 to 7 days after the birth of a new baby. And then within each sub-clan, it breaks down into families. A common ancestor distinguishes families. Within each family, it breaks down into extended families, which includes typically up to three generations, grandparents, parents, and children under one roof. And then within each extended family, you have the nuclear family, as we know it today in American society, which is just the parents and the children. Because this is how the Hmong community or Hmong nation is organized, I can go anywhere in the world and be taken in as family by someone with the same last name as mine, for the simple reason that I belong to that clan.
Oh my God.
By the same token, I can go anywhere in the world and will not be allowed to marry someone who has the same last name as mine, because that person is considered my sister. However, an interesting Hmong marriage practice is that I am encouraged and I can marry my first cousin. We can marry each other because my first cousin has the name of her father, which is a different last name than mine. So this is how the Hmong nation is organized and how we are one big family, or one people. This is how we've lived for centuries until we arrived in the United States about 30 years ago. Today, although rare, we do have Hmong who married within the clan. We also have interracial and interethnic marriages. Among my relatives, I could think of a brother-in-law who is white, a brother-in-law who is Hispanic, and a niece who is married to a Min, another minority from Laos. So things are changing. Things are changing not only in the area of marriage, but also in other major areas of our culture as well. In the religion arena, there is a lack of reliable resources. But my own observation is that 90% of the Hmong still hold on to the traditional religion. 9% has converted to Christianity, and 1% adopts other religions or no religions. Religion for the Hmong, as with many people in the world, is very important in their lives. By the religion that one subscribes to, their life or their activities is generally determined. For the Hmong who subscribes to the traditional religion, which is a composition of shamanism, animism, and ancestor worship, the religious lifestyles typically involve having a shaman performing regular ritual ceremonies for both curing the sick and securing blessings and spiritual protection from the evils of the world. From time to time, you may have seen families hold crowded gatherings at their home, and the noises that you will hear from the home are the sounds of a gong, bells, and the voice of a man or woman chanting loudly. Ladies and gentlemen, don't be alarmed. The traditional Hmong family is merely practicing its religion. Similarly, when there is a death in the Hmong family, especially in a family that still subscribes to the traditional religion, do not be alarmed when you see many people coming to the home of the deceased or the funeral or the church where the funeral service is held. Also, do not be alarmed when you hear loud crying and constant blowing of an instrument called a gong and the sound of a drum at the church. The traditional Hmong is merely paying its respect to the deceased, and the deceased is being guided back to the ancestors through the sounds of the gong and the drum. For the Hmong Christian, their religious lifestyle is not too different from what we know and see in the media regarding typical Christians. However, similar to the traditional Hmong Christians also from time to time come together in large groups and crowded home to provide strength and support for the struggling family. Hmong typically would do that because we are a community and family-oriented people, and regardless of what religion we subscribe to. We look out for each other and band together. Of course, this is not to say that there's no division in the Hmong community, but Hmong in general stick together. This brings me to talk about Hmong values, which will be the last subtopic that I will cover on Hmong culture. As with most people in the world, Hmong value what is good and positive in general. But to point out some of the more reliable values, Hmong value family and community, as I stated earlier. In some ways, one can say this value is a built-in value. What I mean by this is that the Hmong social structure, as I've described earlier, fosters this value. In addition, to practice the traditional religion, one needs to be close to members of one's clan who shares the same rituals and ceremonies. Otherwise, it would be very hard to be Hmong, because every major event, such as the birth of a newborn, marriage, or death, requires someone from the clan to play a predetermined role. Next, the Hmong highly respect, which is, of course, the golden rule of treat others as how you would like to be treated. In general, Hmong are usually polite and kind. Everywhere they go, and if they come across someone they know or someone that they get a good vibe from, they would typically say to each other, "Kato hala," or "You're also here," in a camaraderie tone of voice, of course. Lastly, Hmong highly value freedom and harmony. The last thing that Hmong want is heartaches, pains, and hatred. Throughout the history of Hmong, we have, going back to China, we have fought everyone who tried to oppress us. We will not start a fight with anyone unless they force us to fight them. This still holds true to this day. Here in America, we have freedom and opportunity, but when our rights and opportunities are unjustly stepped over, we will not hesitate to fight back, legally, of course. This brings me to the last topic that I will cover today, the Hmong educational experience. If there were anything positive that came out of the experience that we went through in Laos, I would have to say it is the opportunity to gain an education for those of us who are in America. If I were still in Laos, I, like most Hmong, will likely not be able to go to school, even if I wanted to. There are two primary reasons for this. The first reason is that our lifestyle in Laos does not require one to have an education to have a fulfilling life. We were self-sufficient, we had crops, animals, and land. We had everything that was needed to survive. If anything else were needed, it was actually just manpower to help with the farming, which partly explains why we have such big families. The other reason is that education was not an opportunity for everyone in Laos. If your parents did not have the money, you were out of luck. There were no grants, scholarships, or loans as we have in this country for those who had the potential or want to go to school. So those who were able to attend school in Laos were mainly the sons of wealthy and influential Hmong families who typically held office. Notice I did not say daughters. The reason is because Hmong had this distorted view that an educated daughter would do the family no good because the daughter will be taking the education that she had to benefit only the family that she would be marrying into. This is, of course, no longer the case in America. But that was the belief back then. Consequently, only very few Hmong men knew how to read and write in Laos. Let me now talk about, actually let me backtrack a little and also say that this was also due to the fact that it wasn't until the 1950s that we had a written language. Prior to that time, our stories and history were passed from one generation to another through vocal or oral storytelling. Today in America, most Hmong have already lost that tradition. Let me now talk about the Hmong educational experience in America. Many things can be said about this topic, but what have stood out for me are several things. The first is that the Hmong community has slowly realized that education is the key to success and that knowledge is power. Those who realized this early on have taken advantage of every opportunities that have come their way and has made something out of them. In the last 30 years of our 5,000 years old history, for the first time, we produce rapidly Hmong doctors, lawyers, engineers, school teachers, and state and local office holders. To other communities looking at ours, these achievements are probably not very significant or new because they have seen it happen in their respective communities. But to the Hmong community, we have come a very long way. Had we remaining in Laos, many of these professionals are probably just simple subsistence farmers today. And so today we have a handful of Hmong professionals because of the educational opportunities that exist in America. While a handful of Hmong is making it, the harsh reality is that most young Hmong are still struggling to attain their educational goals, and some actually have lost sight of it already. Several factors contribute to this harsh reality. The primary reason is because they are navigating through the educational system by themselves. As indicated earlier, most Hmong parents came to this country without an education. They never had the opportunity to go to school. This prevents them from being able to help their children. Most Hmong parents do not read and write. They do not understand the school system. They simply cannot provide the help that is needed for their children. As the parents not being able to help them are not enough problems, the Hmong children growing up in this country also have to deal with two competing cultures. At school and in the mainstream community, they see the popular culture. They are at a stage in life where they want to be a part of the mainstream. They want to look like and act like their peers. At home, Hmong parents want them to be different. Hmong parents want them to carry the traditional religion, the rituals, and the traditional roles, and so forth. Consequently, many Hmong youth today experience identity crisis, and some actually rebel as a result of that. This is also attributable to the fact that what they learn in school regarding history and the social science has nothing to do with them, even though their parents played a significant role in American history. On top of that, they virtually have no role models at the schools whom they can identify with. I don't know how it is now, but a year ago, according to statistics gathered by a CSU Chico anthropology student, the Chico Unified School District has more than 500 students, but there's only one full-time Hmong liaison and 4 part-time liaisons, and there is no Hmong teachers. Given these realities that I just spoke about, it is very hard for most students to access resources and get help. I can go on and on, but the point is, the Hmong students face unique challenges in the educational system. And the way that this problem might be alleviated is to create a learning center that is catered to the needs of the Hmong parents and Hmong students, where parents could be taught how to help their children at home even though they don't speak English, and where students could get the tutoring that they need. In addition, the schools can step up recruitment of Hmong teachers and more liaisons to help bridge the gap between the Hmong community and the schools. I would now like to end this speech with some recommendations. While a secret war had occurred in Laos and over 35,000 Hmong lives has lost, and hundreds of Hmong being uprooted to this country and others in the world, and today those who are still in Laos still struggle to survive, the secret war and the contributions of the Hmong must continue to be acknowledged and made known to the American people. This can be accomplished with efforts from both the Hmong community and the public agencies that have a responsibility to the public. The Hmong community should strive to hold regular educational and cultural activities such as this one today, so that the mainstream community and the public agency continually are reminding and educated on who we are. Likewise, the public service providers can support this endeavor by taking proactive actions to learn about this new people that they are serving. They can step up recruitment of Hmong staff. They can be more open to suggestions from the Hmong community regarding what can be done to more effectively serve the Hmong community. It's been an honor and privilege for me to be a part of this occasion this morning. I've always welcomed the opportunity to share about our history, the contributions we made to the United States, and our needs. I hope that when you leave here today, you'll leave with a greater understanding and appreciation for the Hmong people. Hmong City Association, thank you for having me here, and to the rest of you, enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you. 我长大。